Hi, everybody. Welcome to another PDUs to Go Norcord community session on PM Next. I'm elated to be joined by a friend, colleague, MG100 colleague, Thinkers 50, Peter Bregman, who is going to share incredible insights with us on this idea of really leading with emotional courage. I can't think of a more relevant topic amidst all that we have going on than Peter and this topic. So Peter, welcome to this session. And for those that may not know as much about you, can you just briefly talk about a little about who you are, what you do, and where did this idea of leading with emotional courage came from?
Sure. So I run a company called Bregman Partners, which I started about 21, 22 years ago. And the focus has been on coaching the sort of top performers in big organizations mostly, and figuring out, and my career in a sense has been the exploration, the understanding of like, why is there this gap between what we know and what we do? How do we become more fully who we can become in the work that we do as leaders, as people? I kind of figured out halfway through my career that I was not just interested in helping people become exceptional leaders, but also stellar human beings. And both of those are really important. And I think one is really sort of supportive of the other. A little bragging, I was ranked the #1 executive coach in the world. I've done a bunch of, I've gotten ranked in Thinkers 50 in a bunch of different ways. I'm kind of trying to bring all of that to bear on getting this message of emotional courage out there.
You know, you talk a lot about how to have hard conversations and create accountability. And I captured from our last conversation, inspiring action on most important work. And this is such an important topic for project management professionals.
So Nora, we're going to start with an exercise.
Okay.
I'm going to have you do it, and everybody could do it all together when we're doing it. I'm going to ask you to repeat this word 10 times. And then I'm going to ask you a question. And I'm going to ask you to answer that question as quickly as you can.
Okay.
Okay? Ready? The word is silk. So we're going to do it together. Ready?
Go.
Silk.
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 Silk. Silk. Silk. Silk. Silk. Silk. What does a cow drink? Quick.
Milk.
Actually, water. But it makes a lot of sense. No, you're not the only one. It's a very normal thing to.
Oh, my mother would be embarrassed.
No, it's a very normal thing. So why? Like, why did you fall for it the way I did too the first time that I did it? Is because we get into habits. Like we get in this habit of silk, 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 cow, milk. It makes tremendous amount of sense, especially when we don't interrupt the process and the habit. And this is the challenge of everything that we're doing. This is a challenge of project managers trying to get people to move forward and work in a different way, or to draw accountability in a different way, which is people are in habits and we have to interrupt the habits, and we have to interrupt our own habits of how we lead and how we move forward. If we don't do that, we're going to end up saying milk to the question of when does a cow drink, right? Because we're in this habit of silk. So we created a habit and we follow through. The idea of learning, the idea of closing the gap between what you know and what you do, is all about breaking habits. So I'll start, Nor, with a story. I was of a habitual response in a leadership meeting. And this is with the CEO and the leadership team, but you can also imagine this being with a project manager and a group of people who are working on the project, where the company had been doing incredibly well, kind of hockey stick projections that were realized until one quarter, and it faltered and was slightly down. And so we called this meeting together to say, what is happening? Like why, what went wrong last quarter, and how are we going to change it for this quarter? And the first person to speak was the head of sales. And he goes, look, obviously we didn't get the sales we wanted. That's why our revenue's down. The issue is, though, that marketing had no new messages for us. So, we didn't have anything new to say. And he looked at, everybody looked at marketing. Then marketing, hesitated for a second to go, that's true. We didn't really have new messages. And that's because, product had new messages. There's nothing new to the product. And then product looked at engineering. And engineering looked at HR. I don't know how they blamed HR in the end, but everybody always blames HR in the end. And so it was kind of going around the circle, and everybody was avoiding blame. And this is an incredibly old habit, right? The habit of avoiding blame is such an old ingrained habit. My Daniel, he's now 12, but he was 10 at the time. And I walked into the kitchen and his face was covered in chocolate, like covered in chocolate. And I walk into the kitchen and I looked at him and I didn't say a thing. And the first thing he said to me was, I didn't eat any chocolate, right? I was unbidden. Like I didn't ask him what he was doing. He just said, I didn't eat any chocolate. And I said, go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, come back out and tell me the same thing, right? And by the way, I said, I didn't ask you if you ate chocolate, but just go look and come back. So he went into the bathroom, he comes back, face obviously completely sparkling clean. And he goes, I didn't eat any chocolate. But it's this, it's this underlying gut response that we want to avoid blame, even in leadership, because then we'll be pointed out, or then we'll be, shamed, or then we might be fired, or any of these things. But when you have a meeting whose focus is to understand what went wrong and how to correct it, avoiding blame defeats the entire purpose of what you're trying to do. And so I looked at the head of sales and I just sort of raised my eyebrows a little bit, and I knew him very well and I knew this team very well. And he got it and he stopped and he goes, hold on, I started this. And this is the difference between poor leadership and good leadership. This is what happens when you interrupt the pattern of silk to milk. And I raised my eyebrows and he looked and he said, okay, hold on, I started this, I'm gonna end it. I could think of 3 things I did last quarter and the sales team did last quarter that contributed to these numbers. Here's where they are, and here's what I want to do differently next quarter. And after that, everybody started change, like the fear, by the way, is that everyone's going to look at him and go, finally, we found out who the problem was, right? And everybody else can sit safe. But if beforehand, the habit was to shirk the responsibility or accountability, now he changed the dynamic. Now it was shameful not to hold and say I'm accountable for something. So the head of marketing then says, hold on, you're not the only one who's responsible. Like there's some things that we did that we could have done better. Here's what they are.
Quick question of you, just like the silk and milk exercise we just did, does speaking up and kind of taking accountability, taking ownership, does that have a ripple effect so others also feel compelled to say, well, you know what, it wasn't all you. You're not the only problem.
100%, that's what it did. You changed the dynamic of shame. Like before, it was shameful to be accountable, right? Because then you were the one responsible. You could be blamed. After he took the responsibility, it changed the dynamic where it was shameful not to find places where you're accountable.
And also, unless you tell me otherwise, it demonstrates an incredible kind of professional maturity for not just that person, but others to jump in and say, you know what, it's not just all you.
100%, Nora, 100%. And here's what's interesting. When I don't take ownership for something, I think I'm doing it so that you will trust me in the future because I haven't made a mistake. But not taking ownership has exactly the opposite impact. Your intention is to say, I'm trustworthy, I did a good job. Your impact is you are ignoring and blind to the challenges that you've contributed to, and now I can't trust you.
And everybody knows it.
Right, everybody knows it.
The room knows
everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. And so it's counterintuitive, but counterintuitively, what you want to do is build trust. The way you do that is by taking ownership for every mistake you could possibly take ownership for.
Got it.
And then people trust you. So I want to do an exercise. Think of an important, difficult conversation you're not having. Okay, and everybody watching can think of this, and you too, Nor. I'm not going to make you, I'm only going to embarrass you so much over the next, 30 or 45 minutes, but I won't make you say this one out loud, but just think of it for yourself, like a difficult conversation you're not having. Now, consider what's stopping you from having that conversation. Do you know everything you need to know to have the conversation? And I'm betting that's yes, right? Are you skilled enough to have the conversation? I know you well enough to know that that's true.
Yeah.
Have you had time to have the conversation, and has there been opportunity to have the conversation?
Yeah.
Now, those are the things we usually solve for. Well, I need more skill or I need knowledge. Even in project management, we try to like train people and develop them and communicate with them. When I was working in doing a ton of project management, when I was working at Accenture, 90% of the change management that we did was all communication and training plans, right? It assumed that if people knew and were able to do what they needed to do, that they would do it, right? But the reality is that is not what holds people back from performance. It is not what holds people back from being accountable. So what is stopping it? And it's this thing I call emotional courage, which is the willingness to feel, right? That if you have that difficult conversation, you're going to have to feel stuff. You might have to feel embarrassment or anger or defensiveness or the passive aggressiveness that comes after someone, you have a conversation and they smile and they go, thank you for the feedback. And then they don't talk to you for 3 months. Like, you're going to have to deal with those emotions, and those emotions are deeply uncomfortable. And if you are willing to feel everything, if you're willing to feel the shame, the embarrassment, the defensiveness, the anger, the passive aggressiveness, if you're willing to feel everything, then you can do anything. Then you can move forward. You have the knowledge, skill, capability, time, opportunity. You have all that. And if, by the way, if you don't have it, it's super easy to get that stuff. The hard part is to feel the things you need to feel in order to move forward on the things you want to move forward.
So you're talking about, Peter, something that my perception, I know it's hard. This is really difficult. How do you, or will you share how to get over that angst? Because you're right. I cannot think of an excuse. Time, opportunity, skill, all that stuff are excuses. You're exactly right. You don't want to feel the conflict or the embarrassment, or
right.
So how do you get over those hurdles?
Great question. So there's actually two questions, right? One question is this even developable? Like, can you develop emotional courage? That's one question. And then the second question is, if you develop it, does it have an impact on your results? If the answer is no to either one of those, this becomes a not interesting conversation.
Yep.
I mean, it becomes maybe interesting intellectually, but not useful, not practical. But if the answer is yes to both of them, right, then this becomes key to being more successful as a leader, as a project manager, as a person. So I had explored a lot of this idea, and I wanted to test against those two questions. So I created a leadership intensive, like a 4-day, very intensive program. I still run it once a year, although it remains to be seen whether we can do it in person or not, because no one's in person. But it's I run it once a year, and people come for various reasons. So people came, it's by application, and people came because, they wanted to stop shrinking from or avoiding conflict. They wanted to connect with people in a powerful way with both heart and mind. They wanted to take their team to the next level, right? Those are the things we need to do as project managers, right? And it's what we all wanted. So that's why they came. So we had the 4-day leadership intensive. The number one comment that people made was, had I known what I was going to do over these next 4 days, I never would have come. And it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. Now, those two things always go together. You're never going to have the best experience of your life if you didn't also go to places you didn't think you would go to, right? Otherwise, you would have a normal experience that you always have in your life. So you have to go places you never thought you'd go in order to have an experience. But still, so people loved it. It was amazing. The question is, did it change things? 8 months after, without any coaching intervention from us, and I'm a big fan of coaching, and I generally don't believe that trainings make a difference without coaching, but without any coaching intervention from us, we sent out an assessment to them and people around them. And these are the questions that we asked. And we did it in a 7-point Likert scale. So either -3, -2, -1 is they've gotten worse, 0, no change, +1, +2, +3, they've gotten effective, more effective, much more effective. Raising hard to talk about issues in a way that initiates important conversations. Taking risks that could lead to new possibilities, right? And we're saying, is this person gotten worse, the same, or better? Connecting with people in a way that inspires their commitment. Staying grounded in the face of success, failure, or uncertainty. Communicating skillfully in the presence of strong emotions. Driving the most critical business results, which is part of the impact piece, and overall leadership effectiveness. And in every single case, for every single question and every single person responding, the answers were more effective or much more effective for every single thing that we asked 8 months later without an interim intervention from us. So what it means is, yes, you can develop it. Once you've developed it, you've built the muscle and it's long lasting, and it has an impact on business results.